Hello, my name is Marcin Kubacki, I'm Chief Software Architect at Storware, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to protect OpenStack environments in an agentless way. OpenStack environments are mostly KVM based. Still, backup of the virtual machines running in the KVM environments and those running in the OpenStack environments can actually be different. Basic functionality, what you might expect, actually in many cases is enough. So you are able to use the same strategy to protect your regular KVM, standalone KVM hypervisors, and these that run on the OpenStack environments. To be more accurate in these terms, you will need virtual machines running using QCOW2 files as a virtual machine drives. That's not always the case. So depending on your OpenStack environment, you may expect different level of functionalities and completely different backup strategies. vProtect supports two main configurations for your virtual machines running in the OpenStack environments. First, the most, let's say, basic is the KVM standalone approach. So, while using APIs exposed by the OpenStack environment, you are still able to grab files, QCOW2 files, running directly on the hypervisor environment. The good thing is actually that we are communicating directly with the hypervisor, so we are able to spread work across multiple hypervisors. The downside is unfortunately that not too many configurations, not too many OpenStack installations use this approach. It is quite common to use Ceph as the primary storage that is used by the virtual machines. So instead of grabbing QCOW2 files, vProtect is also able to connect directly to your Ceph storage and grab data directly from there. In both scenarios, both when using QCOW2 files and Ceph, we are able to use do incremental backups in both approaches. Okay, so let's start. First step is to log in into vProtect console. And let me describe shortly what you can see in here. So that's a demo environment. It supports multiple hypervisors. In our case, we have 2 nodes, we have some basic dashboard for general backup statistics. And in our case, we want to actually go to the hypervisors and see OpenStack Hypervisor Manager details. In this section, you are able to configure certain things, like the region, like the default project name, where you are going to restore your VMs if you are not going to provide it during the restore phase. Or, optional, you can enable Ceph support. This actually allows you to provide keyring file and Ceph configuration that allows vProtect later to connect directly to the Ceph monitors and grab data from there. So using Ceph in OpenStack environment actually requires us to connect directly from the node. So on the node, you will have to install Ceph RBD-NBD connector. When you are selecting Hypervisor Manager, you also need to select which node is going to connect and grab data. In OpenStack environments, you don't have to install vProtect directly on the OpenStack. It can be remote, but keep in mind that actually at some point we'll also introduce another strategies, not only compatible with Ceph or QCOW2, but maybe at some point you will see also disk attachment method, similar to these that you have already seen in ref environments that I have presented previously. Now, usually you need to synchronize inventory. So in vProtect, we have a list of virtual machines, and in the OpenStack, you have a set of projects with instances running there. So when we are scanning and synchronizing virtual machines in both inventories, we are actually creating a task here at the console. So inventory synchronization task basically collects all of the information about running instances and their volumes. You can see that inventory synchronization is almost complete. Now, once you have this task completed, well, once this task completes, you will have option to see all of the virtual environments running in there, also in here. I know that there is a VM called zeros, so you can see that we have two VMs. One is actually the VM that I have previously restored, and we are able to proceed with our backups. So in order to backup virtual machine, you click here, and you are able to choose between type of the backups, backup destination. Maybe you would like to also to schedule it for near future so that you can leave your work earlier but invoke backup automatically at some point. And again, this creates a task. So export task in this case actually is going to connect to the hypervisor and grab, in this case, QCOW2 file. If we configure Ceph, vProtect will recognize that this is a Ceph volume and it is going to use Ceph credentials so that it is able to grab data from the Ceph monitors directly. So from the network perspective, usually you just need access to the hypervisors over SSH, and from the and when you are going to use Ceph, you will need actually direct connection from the nodes to the Ceph monitors. Okay, so the backup process has completed. So you can see that there were actually two tasks. One was the export. Export basically grab data and store it on the staging space. And later there is a store task that pushes data to some backup provider. In our case, it is a separate file system. The cool thing is that you can actually share staging space together with file system so that the second task would basically be instant, just moving files to the different directories. Now, behind the scenes, obviously the approach is pretty much usual. We create snapshot. Once we have snapshot, we grab either files or directly grab data from the Ceph environment. Now, let's go to the details of the virtual machine. So, in our case, we can see that there was some activity. I have created some backups previously. You can see also that there were some restores. Backup sizes, this is a very small VM, so this is basically very, it basically stays the same. Backup time, obviously it can differ. You can also check where are the bottlenecks. Maybe the export phase takes longer than expected, or maybe your store phase. Maybe tasks are waiting in the queues too long. So this is the place where you could expect to see where are potential bottlenecks. And restore time, the same. So it takes more sometimes to restore files. Maybe sometimes they are actually already available, like in terms of the file system, for instance. So they are easier, well, they are quicker to be mounted actually or imported directly to your hypervisor. Now let's scroll down to the bottom of the screen. You see backups that I already have. I have 3 backups. This is my backup history. I can see some details about these backups previously. So you can notice that there is obviously volume, some metadata kept together with this backup. But in general, we have a small file system. So we scan for file systems, so we are later able to mount and restore individual files. Our VM has only one drive, but if you have more of them, you can exclude individual drives. And optionally, you have ability to execute some custom commands before and after snapshot takes place. So for better consistency, this is the way to go. We are able to connect directly to your virtual machine over SSH and invoke custom commands before and after snapshot takes place. Okay, so now let's try to restore virtual machine. So I have this button in here, and I want to restore it back to the original hypervisor manager. I choose Hypervisor Manager, and let's call it, for instance, zeros restored to. It creates task again, it's a restore task, and later VM is going to be imported. And depending on your configuration, the process is slightly different. In our case, we'll have to go through the glance in order to be able later to create a volume. So first we are importing into glance, not directly to the hypervisor as it was before, and later a new volume is going to be created. With Ceph environments, obviously the approach is slightly different because we are able to upload directly to the Ceph, and from there we are able also to create volumes. The restore is actually instant in our case. We obviously are able to locate files immediately because they are locally accessible. That is why restore was instant, and later new task is being created. It's import in this case. Import basically pushes data to the environment. Okay, so restore has completed. Now let's go to the OpenStack dashboard so that we can see our result. Okay, so I am going to instances. And you can see that zeros restored to is already available in there. So basically the process was very easy from using our vProtect UI in this case, but the good thing is that actually with quite recent version, with 3.9, we have also released plugin for Horizon. And here at the bottom, you can see that there is a dedicated menu that allows you to do exactly the same what I already did. So in the backup tab here, you will be able to see list of the instances that you are able to protect. This is fetched from the, obviously, vProtect API, so whatever it is in vProtect's inventory is going to be visible in here as well. And you can initiate backup process. For instance, our zeros virtual machine, we would like to execute backup task, for instance. And obviously you are also able to choose backup destinations exactly the same like it was in vProtect user interface. Behind the scenes, obviously a request is going to be made. So now if you go back to the console, you can expect that a new task is going to appear, well, export task, obviously, which is going to initiate the whole process again. So the overall process is going to look exactly the same. With this brand new UI, obviously you are able to restore previous virtual machines. So this requires a dedicated tab because you have just removed your very important virtual machine and now you would like to restore it back. So in the restore tab, you're going to see all of the VMs that have some backup available to be restored, and later import obviously back to the hypervisor as well. So the process is exactly the same. From this new integration, you're also able to configure schedules and policies and assign them to the virtual instances. Let me just click here, create schedule, for instance. You're able to specify exactly the same fields like in normal vProtect, so some specifics when virtual machines need to be executed, specific days of the week, maybe specific occurrence of the day of the week, like the last Wednesday of the month, or just during specific months. And finally, you are able also to monitor tasks, so the progress that it is being actually done on the vProtect side. So without leaving OpenStack Horizon, you're able to see what is actually happening on the vProtect site. Now let's go back to the vProtect console. Sometimes you just don't want to restore virtual machine back to your environment, you just need specific files that you have lost with the VM. So instead of restoring complete virtual machine, you can also access individual files using mount option. You mount specific file systems of the virtual machine, and this can be mounted automatically or manually. Automatic mount basically allows you to restore all of the file systems and mount them exactly the same like they were in the original file system. So if you have root file system, then you actually are able to have a subdirectory called home, which, let's say it's a separate file system, mounted exactly as it was before. This gives you some sort of feeling that you are inside the real virtual machine and you have a complete single root file system structure back. Now, sometimes you just prefer separate file systems, like Windows machines, for instance. So you can select the second option. And for virtual machines, where backup format is basically raw file, we are also able to expose drives over iSCSI. This gives you the option to expose individual drives and mount it directly, let's say, in your new virtual machine, where you can access these files exactly the same as they were on the original VM. Especially very important when you have, let's say, Windows machines. You would like to preserve original permissions. Now, thanks to this mechanism, you will have complete block device accessible over iSCSI, so that Windows will actually interpret these permissions instead of Linux, like in our case. I have already mounted this particular backup, so if you go to the mounted backups, you can see that there is a zeros virtual machine already mounted. I have a specific backup available in here, and in the details I see that there is a single root accessible for being browsed. And directly from the user interface, from here, you're able to select specific files and later restore them to your local computer. Or if you have bigger files, obviously you are able also to access directly path that is here mentioned in here. This is a mount point on the node, so you can basically use SCP or any other command to directly copy data wherever you like. There are moments where actually snapshot-based backup is not the proper way of doing backups. Sometimes databases are especially fragile in this area, so you may want actually to use native database backup mechanism, for instance, or any other application that you have in your data center. With vProtect 3.9, we have actually extended a little bit capability for protecting different applications. This is a generic mechanism, so that on top of regular OpenStack snapshot-based backup, you're able to provide your own custom way of protecting these VMs. So let's say this is a MariaDB, for instance. I would like to create a new application. Application basically is something very generic. So this can be anything. It can even be a set of files. Now, this application needs to be protected by specific node. Optionally, it can be assigned as a policy. And this is, let's say, MariaDB. MariaDB expects us some access details, especially this is going to be invoked over SSH. But keep in mind that vProtect can also invoke commands directly on the node with some client that you are using to connect remote services. This is especially important if SSH access is not available on the virtual machine. So in our case, let's just provide anything. Oh, and obviously name. And we provide templates that allow you basically to fill in some key information, which databases you would like to protect, some passwords, some credentials to the database. Similarly, instead of just using built-in configurations that we provide, you're also able to develop your own scripts. These scripts have parameters, and like in this case, we later expose these parameters as environmental variables. So later you are able to customize your backup workflow even more. So basically, application backup is some sort of extension that allows you to customize the backup in your environment. So in most cases, you are going to just approach with regular snapshot-based backups. And if you have specific applications, you will just try to protect them with the native mechanism that, let's say, your database offers. Now, few more things. Policies and schedules. So basically, we have divided that into several sections depending on the use case that you're using. For the OpenStack, we obviously have virtual environment backup and application backup available. We also have recovery plans. We have discussed backup policies in previous videos, so you may just watch other video. Basically, you group virtual machines in terms of policies. Policies have the ability to have several schedules. Now, recovery plan can have schedule or not. In general, recovery plans is the way to group your restore processes in a single policy, let's say. You can invoke it on demand or invoke it periodically, for instance, to test if your backup works. So now when I'm going to create a recovery plan like OpenStack, I can specify rules. Each rule is dedicated for specific type of the virtual environment. So in our case, it is going to be, let's say, prod environments. I would like to specify just OpenStack virtual machines, and I have my zeros available in here. I can optionally assign schedules, but more important is restore parameters section. Basically, well, you don't specify specific backup. You have to specify either if you would like to restore last successful backup or any. Now, the second option actually is a good when you would like to restore even failed backup, which is going obviously to fail. And this is going actually to have some impact. You will have a result that basically you are not protected because you failed to restore recent backup. I'm going to specify obviously some details, exactly the same as you would have in a regular restore window. And such recovery plan can obviously be executed manually or from time to time periodically. Last but not least, backup destinations. So with vProtect, you're able to integrate your OpenStack environment with multiple different backup destinations that you have in your environment. So in most cases, it can be just a plain file system. File system actually is a very good option, especially that we provide built-in deduplication capabilities so that you can just use basically any storage that you are able to expose to the vProtect node. But in many cases, you may want to integrate with some enterprise-grade backup destinations, like Dell EMC, Avamar, for instance, or IBM Spectrum Protect, or some object storage. S3 actually is one of these that we tend to see not only off-prem, like Amazon's S3 implementation, but also on-prem, where you have, like, let's say, Scality or other vendors that expose their object storage over S3 compatible APIs. Wrapping up, vProtect is able to protect OpenStack environments in several ways. It is agentless, it provides you both full and incremental backup, it supports both QCOW2-based storage and Ceph-based storage, and is able to store backups in multiple backup providers. You can restore your virtual machines directly to the OpenStack environment or restore individual files as well. With brand new release, we also are able to execute tasks directly from your OpenStack Horizon instead of using vProtect's user interface or command line. So thank you for watching and see you next time.